Hi everybody, it's Susan from Sunrise Quilt Studio, and this is the third session of planning a quilt, the third video, and today I'll be chain piecing all of the pieces together that I cut last week. So I hope you'll stay with me and I'll show you how I'm going to go about making all of these quilt blocks. Okay, I have my instructions here, and I have my box with all of my fabric in it, and I'm just going to pull those out. Now I have all my leftover fabric, my extra fabric here, and I did buy extra fabric of the aqua and the white, so if you follow this pattern and you don't come up with as much extra fabric, the reason is I just bought an extra, I think a ½ yard of each. So these are the scraps here, and then here's about an extra ½ yard of each. So that's why that is there. But I do have all of my binding and my borders cut in here. So I'm gonna set those aside because I don't need them. So I've got all of these pieces that I need to put together. So I'm gonna take them out. And I move my box where I can reach it if I need it. So I've got all of my pieces. So one thing about this block, it looks complicated, but it really goes together pretty easily. So that's a good thing about the quatrefoil block. It kind of fools you a little bit. And when I get to my instructions, what we're going to do is we're going to make that unit. And to do that, we need to take all of these squares. I'm going to set these aside because I don't want these at the moment. I'm going to put those back in my box. And for each one of these squares, I need 2 of these. If you want to use the line drawing method, you're going to need to do this on the back side of 72 of your white squares. Otherwise, you can put a piece of washi tape or glow line tape on the bed of your sewing machine and give yourself a line to follow when you're sewing from one corner to the other. And that's what I did on my machine because I decided I didn't want to draw 72 lines. So I'm going to adjust the camera and show you how I did that, and then I'm going to go start sewing these squares on to the blue 4.5 inch squares. Okay, the way I did this is I got a narrow ruler. I have this June Taylor ruler. It's 4 inches wide, and I lowered my needle and then lined the ruler up against the needle, and then I have my base plate, I am assuming is square, and it lines up right to my 1.5 inch mark, and I lowered my presser foot and then I put my tape down there. So what this is going to do is going to line that tape up to the left side of the needle. So when I sew, let me get a piece of fabric and one of these with the lines on it. I'll go ahead and use one of those. And when I sew on this, and I'm lining that edge up with the edge of this washi tape, the needle is going to go right to the inside of that dark line, so of the drawn line. So what that will do will make it more accurate actually when I go and trim and fold up and press that line. So I'm going to go ahead and stitch that, and I'm just watching my point here, making sure it's lined up with my square, and then I'm just keeping that point on the edge of my washi tape. Okay, let me show you what that looks like. Okay, I don't know if you can see, but the stitching is just to the top edge of that line that I drew. So that will actually make it a little bit more accurate. When I trim this and press it, it should come out pretty square. if nothing else, it'll be a little bit more, and then I can just trim it to make it square. So that's how I did that. Now I don't have any, you can buy special tape for that. I don't have that, so I did have washi tape, so I decided to just go ahead and do that. So I'm going to go ahead and chain piece these, and these are, I believe there's 36 of these squares, so you need 72 white 2.5-inch squares. So we're just going to chain piece all of these together. I'm going to do one side, and then I will trim and press and then do the other side. Okay, so now I have all of these pieces sewn, and I'm going to cut them apart, and what I'm making is this unit here. So I'm going to go ahead, and I've got them all chain pieced together. So I'm going to cut them apart, and then I'm going to trim and press, and then sew the piece that goes on the opposite corner of it, or the corner adjacent to it. Now another thing, you can cut these off with your scissors, or you can go to your rotary cutting mat and cut them, which I'm going to do because it will take less time when I have this many. Okay, so I am ready to trim all of these off. I've already started. I've got a stack here going, and I'm just lining up my 1/4-inch line on I have a square ruler here. You can use any ruler you've got, and just trimming them off. So I'll do that for all 36 blocks. And I'm not too worried about it being exact because this is just seam allowance. This isn't an area where I'm going to be sewing another piece on there and need it to be accurate. I just need it to be approximate. And if you want to do this with your scissors, you can certainly do that. I just thought I'd speed things up a little bit when I've got this many to do at a time. I think this is faster. Alright, so I want to take my stack. I'm going to go back over to my pressing board and get these all pressed. Okay, now for each one of these, I'm going to just press them flat and then press them open. And lay it to the side. And you can use steam if you want, or you can just use a dry iron. I have the steam on mine, but it's not up real high. So just a little bit of steam. And you see there's no steam shooting out, so it's not up high. Just do one right after the other. Got those all done. Now I need to sew on the piece that goes on this side. So let me move my iron out of the way. And I'm just going to do the same thing. And I'm going to take my white squares and put them in the adjacent corner. So right here. And then I'm going to stitch from this corner to that corner. have all of the pieces sewn on now, and so I'm going to clip them apart again and trim off the outer corner and then press, and then we'll have all 72 units done. Okay, I have all of my units here, and I've already started trimming. I switched rulers. This one's a little bit smaller, it's easier for me to handle. And just going to trim all of these corners, and then they'll be ready to press, and then I can trim up the blocks if I need to. Okay, so now I'm to the part where I am pressing these open, so I'm just pressing them flat and then pressing open. Okay, now next thing you can do is to check and make sure your units are all square. I know this one is off a little bit. You can tell right up here. And so they should measure 4.5 inches. And looks like I need to trim just a little bit right there and maybe right there. So I'm going to go ahead and take all of these units over to my cutting board and then see what I need to do to square them up. Now there are all different kinds of rulers that you can buy to help you square up your blocks. This one is an Omni Grip ruler by Omni Grid, and it has all different kinds of markings on it that help you square things up and to cut things out. And I've got my 4.5 inch line right here, and I am just going to line that up and then trim on these two sides. And then I'm going to turn it, because I know I have these two sides are square and it looks good, so that block's fine. And I know this edge of the block is square because you know, it was cut and I haven't attached anything to it, so I know those are square. So it's basically these edges that might give me problems. And this looks pretty good except for right there, and a little bit right here. So it's just shaving off teeny tiny bits, and you know, you don't have to do this if you don't want to. If you are comfortable with the way your blocks have turned out and you don't want to take this extra time to do this, you don't have to. Okay, now we're ready to make the next unit, and that is a 4-patch unit. And what this 4-patch is going to look like is we're going to have a teal and a white. There's the right side, and then we'll have an aqua and a white, like that. And we need to make 36 of those, and there will be 4 in each block. So 4 times 9 is 36, so that should be correct. So I'm going to start. I've got my fabrics all stacked. I've got my teal on top of my aqua, and then I got my white in this stack here, and I'm just going to start pairing these up, and then I will just chain piece. So we'll run them through, just one right after the other, 1/4 inch seam allowance as always, and make one big long chain of these, and then we'll come apart and press, and then we'll sew the rows together to make the 4-patch unit. So what I have here are 2 batik fabrics, so it doesn't really matter what side I sew on, but if you have fabric that has an obvious front and a back, kind of like this white on white, you may want to lay them all in one direction to save you a little bit of time if you're in a hurry. But I'm using my 1/4 inch foot, and I'm just planning on going through these as quickly as I can. Now there is one correction that I've made to these instructions already, and that's on the unit that we were doing before. I said to make draw a diagonal line on the wrong side of 8 of the 2.5 inch white squares. Well, that is 8 per block, so I'm going to change that to say 72. So if you've already downloaded the instructions, you might want to make that change on them. And where it says make unit 1, and the first instruction says to draw a diagonal line on the wrong side of 8 of the 2.5 inch white squares, change that 8 to 72. And I'm not pinning anything here, I'm just placing them together and stitching through. Okay, I have all of these sewn together, and then I went ahead and I've got all the aqua done. So I'm going to cut all of these apart and press them and then sew them together into 4-patch units. So okay, so these are all going to be pressed towards the dark. So let me get them all here and get my iron heated up. Get this going again. And I'm just going to flip them all over to the dark side. Okay, so got my iron on, I've got a little bit of steam on, and we're just going to press towards the dark. And if you like to keep your things in a chain, go ahead and do that. I prefer to separate them before I press them. Okay, I'm going to do the same with these. I'm going to turn them with a darker fabric up. Okay, and then we'll press them. Okay, now I need to separate these out again into a pile of the aqua and a pile of the teal. So I've got that, and what I'm going to do now, just going to turn this pile, and we're going to sew these together here. So I'm just going to turn them together, and then I'm going to butt these seams together and then sew down through here. So this should make 36 sets of these. And then I'll just be chain piecing all of these units together. Okay, I have all of these sewn together, and now I'm going to cut them apart and press them and make sure I have the right number. I have these all in piles of 4, so I know that I've got one set for each block, and there's 9 blocks. Since there's 9 blocks in this pattern, in this quilt, then I know I've got the right number. So let me separate these out a little bit and then go to press. And I'm going to press towards the dark. And if you like to press your seams open, you can do that too. So all of these are pressed, and now I just need to lay out the block and put it together, and that I will do in the next week's video. So I am going to gather all of these up, and it doesn't matter what order they're in, I'm just stacking them up, and I'm going to put them in my bin. I already have the other unit in, so I got my 4 patches, and then I have the centers, and that's what we need to make the block. So I'm going to put my extra fabric and my borders and binding in there also, and put my lid on it, and I'll be all ready for the next time I'm ready to sew on it. Well, that's it for this video. We've got all of the units sewn together, and next week we'll put all those units together into blocks, and then those blocks will be all ready to sew into a top. And then we can put on borders and plan the quilting, do the quilting, and then do the binding and the label. So we're getting there. It does take quite a few steps to get through a quilt, and so we have a couple more videos to do before we're done with this. But thank you for joining me, and I hope you enjoyed this video. And if you did, click that like button and subscribe if you haven't already, and click that notification bell so you'll be notified when the next video comes up. And in the meantime, I hope you're all staying safe and healthy, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching. For more quilting ideas, click on the video links. And to keep up with my latest projects, click on the subscribe button. I hope to see you again soon.